Welcome to the Rise Up in Business podcast. I'm Tracy Myler-Crane and I'm your host. I'm a business lawyer, an entrepreneur, a wife and a mum to two wonderful little people. This podcast is designed to be the business and law podcast for small business owners. Each episode explores different business and legal concepts in a clear and easy to understand way, all delivered in bite-sized chunks that are easy to listen to. You're sure to be able to take little nuggets of gold from each episode and implement them into your business straight away. I'm bringing you these podcast episodes each week with my intention being to share with you what you need to know to feel empowered so you can rise up and take control in your business. Let's get into today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome back to the podcast. In this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be diving deep into my story, both my business journey and a little about my personal life, which are behind the reasons why I started this business and how I was able to build a multi-six-figure business in less than 2 years. I've come to realise over the last little while that this is not only of interest to so many of you, but there are some very important lessons in here that I genuinely think can help so many business owners, particularly in the context of self-doubt and the hurdles that I've had to overcome. First of all, though, I want to take a moment just to give a little bit of background for those who don't know my story or for those listeners who are new to the podcast. All right, let's dive in. When I decided I wanted to practice law, I was very much driven by a desire to help people. So way back when I was still at uni and I genuinely thought that my desire to help people would be achieved by practicing in the area of criminal law. Safe to say I was wrong. That certainly didn't fulfill my need or my why. I did practice in criminal law early on in my career, quite a bit. And I acted in some very interesting criminal trials, for example, murder, rape, assault, conspiracy. I did all of that and it was all very exciting at the time, but there was also a lot of minor matters like thefts, drink driving, you name it, I acted on it. It didn't take me all that long to realise that this wasn't well suited to me, to my personality, to my values, and long story short, I landed on my feet in the practice area of litigation and dispute resolution. That was all great. I spent a long time in that practice area. More than half of my career was spent in litigation and dispute resolution, and I founded a law firm with a friend of mine where I spent 6 years. I learned so much during that 6 years about running a business, traditional legal practice, running a litigation practice and managing a team, that it was priceless. It was very much baptism by fire, sink or swim. Wouldn't wish it upon anybody to learn that way, but in hindsight, that tough slog, without a doubt, has served me incredibly well. So I'm able to be here doing what I'm doing now, very much thanks to those earlier years. The time I spent in litigation and dispute resolution was high pressure, it was intense, it meant that exhaustion was celebrated, overworking was celebrated. I had virtually no life outside of my work. It was expected that that would be the case, and it was necessary if you wanted to do well or succeed in litigation practice that that's what was required. It was just the norm. I knew that. I dove in, eyes wide open, absolutely willing. Heaven forbid you needed a sick day. Heaven forbid you wanted time off. Not only was it near impossible, it was frowned upon. So that was the life. It was exciting, it was exhilarating, it was all the things. But it has an expiry. And I realised that it had an expiry when I fell pregnant with my son in mid-2013. So he was born in 2014. He's now 8. But this was the pivotal time for me when I saw for the very first time in my career that this wasn't for me, and I was able to see through a different lens, if you like. And that lens that I all of a sudden was looking through celebrated the fact that I was a woman. It celebrated the fact that I'd become a mum. And what that meant for me was that I stepped away from legal practice very, very quickly. My son wasn't even 3 weeks old. When I took maternity leave with my son, I vowed to return within 3 months and everything would go back to normal. That all changed very rapidly, and I know that all the mums out there are probably having a bit of a chuckle to themselves right now. I certainly do. It changed very rapidly, so I made a very quick, very sudden decision to leave legal practice, and I vowed never to return. I declared to myself that I would not be able to do legal practice and new parenting well. I wasn't able to do both of them well at the same time, and something had to give, and I didn't want that to be the parenting. So I left and I vowed never to return. I was very clear on that. I was very declaratory in that. I made no secret of the fact that I had no intentions of returning ever. I'd never really been the personality to do things in halves, so I figured, why start now? I was fortunate to quickly land a teaching position at the College of Law at ANU, and I was introduced there at ANU to a lifestyle that respected the fact that I was a person as much as I was a lawyer, that I was a mum, and I was so blessed to have a supervisor who was also a dear friend, is a dear friend, who supported me to learn about the balance between the workplace and personal life, and that to me was very new. I spent 5 years lecturing law at ANU and I loved it. I was able to really take a step back and reflect on my purpose, on my why, what I wanted to achieve in my career, and how I wanted to contribute to society more broadly. I really relished this opportunity and this time to reflect in this way and to really be able to take some time to understand that balance was possible and being a mum and having a career was possible. I could do both in a sustainable way. I went on to have my daughter whilst I was teaching at ANU, and it wasn't until she was almost ready to start school that I considered a possible move back to legal practice. I'd become really clear on my why at this point, and my why was to enrich lives. That had always been the essence behind my career, and I have to be honest that along the way in traditional legal practice, I lost sight of that. I became desensitised to certain things. I became caught up in my ego. The fight that was every case, it was competitive, it was real. And I didn't realise it at the time that I was losing sight of my why or that I was becoming desensitised to certain things. But on reflection and the time that I had and the space that I had to really pause and think about all of this, I knew at that point that I never, ever wanted to go back to that way of life, to that culture in the workplace, in traditional legal practice, and to that really toxic environment. I just simply was not prepared to consider a move back to that way of living, working, of being. So it was this point in early 2019 that I decided I was going to create a business that worked for me, that was consistent with my why, that would preserve the lifestyle I had built and come to achieve whilst enjoying time at ANU, but that also worked for my clients. And this was going to be achieved in a unique model that I was going to create, whereby I would operate a legal practice in a different way. This meant my business model and my legal practice was going to be client-focused. It was going to respect the fact that I was a mother and a person as well as a lawyer. And the focus with my clients would be on adding real value to them first and foremost. And so what that really meant was no billable hours, and it would mean I would be accessible, I was values-driven, and I would provide quality legal services in a way that clients wanted. So I'd been listening. Clients contacted me over the years asking if I was able to offer legal advice and act for them in certain things because they'd gone to other lawyers and they just didn't like what they were getting. And of course, I'd always said no. But I'd listened over this time and I decided that surely gone were the days where clients wanted to meet with their lawyer face-to-face in swanky offices with parking hassles and the time commitments. Surely clients want access to experienced lawyers who were seasoned enough to know the ins and outs of business and legal issues, who had cut it in the real world already and who weren't just reading from textbooks or worse, Googling for answers, because the truth is that does happen. It did and still does. So it was at this point in early 2019 that I decided I was going to back myself and I was going to create something that I knew would work for me and that I knew would add such value to my clients. The reality was I'd spent years practicing in litigation and dispute resolution. It had been most of my career. This meant that I had seen it all. I had seen what happens when things go wrong for business owners, and I'd seen the consequences. I'm talking things like business breakups, partnership destruction, what happens when businesses were sued because of misunderstandings or because of there being no contracts in place, no written agreements, disputes when contracts and agreements were in place but they weren't worth the paper they were written on, and lawyers got involved to argue about interpretation, intention, equity, common law, all of it. I'd seen it all. So what I'd come to realise at this point is that there were not many lawyers around who'd spent the sort of time that I had in litigation and dispute resolution and who were keen to step away from that intensity and, let's be honest, step away from the money, because litigation's expensive and most of the time the only winners are the lawyers. But there weren't many lawyers around who wanted to step away from all of that and really help business owners put measures in place to avoid getting caught up in those types of situations where you needed to call in a dispute resolution or a litigation lawyer. What this would mean, I realised, is that I could use my expertise, use my experience, and help business owners set themselves up and structure themselves in such a way where they could avoid or significantly reduce their chances of getting caught up in lengthy and expensive court cases and disputes. And that in turn could help the businesses thrive and grow and move forward, consistent with my why, enriching the lives of my clients. So this point in time is when I realised that was my niche. It was my strength. It was what set me apart from most other lawyers, certainly that I knew. And with the business model that I had in mind, it meant that I could help clients in a way that not many other lawyers were doing at the time, and frankly still don't with the background and expertise that I've got. So that business model that I mentioned, it is this model that I'm operating under now. It's my virtual business model. It meant that I could work from home, I could raise my family. It meant that I didn't have to be stressed at school drop-offs and pickups, and it meant I could have balance. And I had come to value that balance so much from the precious time that I'd spent at ANU. It meant that I could be accessible to clients all over the country that actually didn't need to be physically sitting across the desk from me. And yes, this was pre-COVID. So thanks to sheer dumb luck, I think, I was already set up in this framework before COVID hit. So before so many businesses needed to pivot and adapt to that sort of business model, I'd already set it up. And yes, there are different jurisdictions and different legislation and rules that apply to some aspects of the law when working with clients in different states. But I was fortunate because I already had plenty of experience across working in all the different jurisdictions from my time in traditional practice that I knew how to navigate that. So it just wasn't a hurdle. So what that meant in practical terms is whilst I was still at ANU, I softly launched my business. I was super clear on my why. I was clear on my non-negotiables, my niche, and I was clear that I wanted to offer value to clients who were small business owners, and I was focusing on prevention being better than cure in business. That is the first takeaway I have for you in this podcast, the value of being clear on your why, your niche, and your non-negotiables. This is undoubtedly one of the main reasons why my business took off as well as it did, because it saved me years of time, so much money and energy getting this part right. So I'd had the foresight to get that part right first. Now, I have always been an obsessively organised person. I've made no secret of that, both in my career and in my personal life. In every aspect of my existence, I have always loved all things organisation. So structuring my business and the business processes and systems from the outset was a breeze. I thrive on it. Think Monica from Friends, I'm that sort of person that I'm all about structured free time and let's make systems fun. That's me. So for me, that part was easy. Pretty quickly, though, I realised I needed to work with a business coach because there were things that I just didn't know and I knew I needed to get onto them pretty quickly. So I'd never contemplated marketing in business before. Previously, this was all done through our reputation, word of mouth, those sorts of things, and the good old face-to-face networking over drinks after work. But I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to do face-to-face networking at this point in time because my little ones were little, the juggle was real, truth is, it still is. And I had so much on the to-do list that I wanted to do that going out for drinks and face-to-face networking is not what I wanted to do. I didn't have time, but also it wasn't going to give me the reach that I wanted because I was now positioned to act for clients all across the country. And so I knew that I needed a professional website. That was going to be really important. And the truth is, I'm not the least bit creative or capable when it comes to anything design related. So pretty quickly, I realised that a business coach to help me with these things was going to be important. I knew my skill set, I knew what I had to offer was valuable, and I knew what I couldn't do well. So that's the second takeaway I have for you in this podcast episode, and that is recognising the value that we all have within our own skill set and working with a coach and outsourcing to the experts. It's vital for growth, and I'll talk about that a little more. So I've seen time and time again in my time in business, and I still see it frequently, when business owners try to do all the things because they think they can, because they think they should, and they don't want to invest the funds early on to outsource. I was fortunate that at this point in time, I was still teaching at ANU in the early phase of my business, so I still had an income. So I was able to slowly build the framework for this business and invest a little in the startup essentials, if you like, which for me were a logo, a website, and some business cards, and a coach. I still had clients coming to me from my previous days in practice, so I was able to start building up a new client base right from day one, effectively. And because I was clear on my why and my niche, I was very clear on the work that I wanted to say yes to and the work that I needed to say no to maintain consistency with my niche. I genuinely think that this proved vital in my business growth because I knew I didn't want to end up being a jack of all trades and a master of none. So niching was really critical for me. So having that clarity meant that I wasn't wasting time doing things that weren't serving me and that weren't assisting with my business growth. Once I had the website up and running, I took some advice and some guidance from my coach around social media marketing. Instagram was very new to me. I literally had to Google how to Instagram because I'd never had an Instagram account. So I worked pretty quickly to get up to speed on that, to put that in place, and safe to say that this has paid off significantly. It was my first business coach that said to me, Tracy, you're going to get so much work from Instagram because this is how people find you. And I was shell-shocked. I had no clue because this was a whole new world to me. So just recognizing that and having the foresight to work with a coach who could assist me with that was a game changer. It was about now as well that I started my blog because I knew that I had so much information to share and I wanted to reach as many business owners as I possibly could because I wanted to add that value. I wanted to help, to inspire. I wanted to clarify what some lawyers, in my experience, make unnecessarily complicated and give lawyers a bad rap in general terms. I wanted to convey my message that if the law is used right, it can be a part of the arsenal for any small business owner's toolkit. So that's what I was focusing on. So about now, towards the end of 2019, I left ANU and I leaned into the business as much as I could at that time whilst juggling. I like to call it balancing sometimes, balancing between personal and family life and business. But the reality is it is a juggle, metaphorically. There was only so much I could do with the two little ones at home and my husband working shift work, but we made it work and I was all in as much as I could be. And I was so happy to be building a business that I loved and that I was really proud of, and in a way where I felt so blessed every day to be able to be there for my young family and to be connecting with and working with my clients where I knew that I was adding real value. As my business grew from this point, I was brutal when it came to staying true to my why. I really was brutal when it came to only taking on clients that were aligned with my business mission and that I knew I could add value to. So there were many times that I agonized over whether to take someone on because I could, because I thought I should, because I needed the money, or I felt bad saying no. But at the end of the day, I stood true to my why and my mission, and honestly, it has paid off. I I really want to pause here at this point because I don't want to give the impression that this journey has been easy or that it was all roses up to this point. It wasn't, and truth is it's still not. I faced more negativity than I care to recall from members of the profession and my former colleagues. And I want to be really honest about that. The traditional legal profession is not supportive of women rising. Certainly, that was my experience. I was doing something that was different, so very different, and it was not supported by many. I was told that my model wasn't sustainable, that wanting to grow a business on the foundations of value add was bad business, was naive, and short-sighted. Many colleagues just couldn't get their head around how the model worked. I had questions. So how does it work? And one had actually said to me, it'll fail, like that boldly. That did cause me to doubt myself, to wonder whether they were right, whether I was missing something. Imposter syndrome was very real, to say the least. But I did manage to push all that aside. That was not easy. And I pressed on because I truly believed in what I was doing. And I had the support, the absolute full and unconditional support of my husband. And boy, I'm glad that I pushed on and maintained my focus, because that is why I'm here today talking to you, because that was a pivotal point. I could have easily gone away, joined the public service or joined another law firm and just gave in, but I didn't. So the takeaway here from this episode that I really want to shine a light on is self-belief. And that was not easy. That self-belief and my absolute crystal clear clarity around my why were the reasons I was able to continue and move forward. The reality is, and we all know this, and I see it all the time with my clients, that self-doubt and haters are real. They'll always be there. But being able to have the courage, or to draw on the courage to push through, as hard as it is and as confronting as it can mean the difference between our success and our failure. So I'm really putting an emphasis here that this was hard. Once I reached this point and we continued on, I was in a financial position then to invest in some up-leveling. So I was fortunate to be able to work with a new coach. I invested in a rebrand for my business, which was really exciting but overwhelming at the same time. A copywriter, a new website, new marketing, SEO work, and finally, I took the next step of growing my team. Gosh, this was exciting, it was exhilarating, it was daunting, and I went into overwhelm so many times. I couldn't even tell you how many times I went into overwhelm. What if the clients stop coming? What if the money runs out? What if it doesn't work? What if people decide that I really am a fraud and that they don't want to come and work with me? I've got bills to pay, I've got a family, you know the story, all of it. The stories that we tell ourselves. But what I came to learn through that process with the strong support of my coach is that up-leveling in business is uncomfortable, it's scary, and yes, it is overwhelming, but it is wholly and absolutely worth it, because I came out the other side of that process with a business that I never imagined was possible for me, and with a newfound level of confidence in what I was doing and my ability. So it was about now that I started to outsource and grow my team, both employees and contractors. This was a game changer. Massive takeaway. Business growth requires growing the team. Oh my gosh, I was so nervous, but it was worth it. A VA, a bookkeeper, a copywriter, gosh, who knew? And before I knew it, a new junior lawyer joined my team. My business model was working, and I realised at this point that it was valued by my team members as much as my clients and my family. I had been spot on when I'd said earlier on, surely the time's come where clients don't want the inconvenience and hassle of having to make time and arrangements to meet with their lawyer face-to-face. I was spot on. And by this time, COVID had taught so many people that this was the new way of doing things. So I was fortunate in that I was set up for it, and this business model was thriving. More and more business owners were pivoting and adapting because they had to, and I was set up and positioned to be able to help them in this space, and I felt privileged to be able to do that. So outsourcing and growing my team at the right time was pivotal. It was pivotal in my business growth, and I'd acted for enough business clients, business owners, for long enough to know this was the next step. So I knew that it was, and I took it, and I've continued to take it. And I now have a beautiful, very senior, very experienced lawyer on the team, and it's just going strength from strength. And I feel so privileged to be able to work with her in this space because she values the model as much as I do. The next step, I'm so happy to say, after here in my journey was this podcast. So launching this podcast became something I wanted to do, and I wanted to do it very quickly because it was my way of reaching so many more business owners. And I had the confidence behind me now to know that so many people wanted to hear what it is that I wanted to share. I was enriching lives, and that was my why. So again, this step was of launching the podcast. It was consistent with my why, consistent with my business values and with my mission. The mission being to empower every business owner I meet to back themselves legally. I have not once ever regretted this podcast. I love it. And I go on and on about the team behind me with my podcast editor. And honestly, they've made it so easy, which is why it's so easy for me to focus on content and just record. The rest they do, and it gets to your ears. The last thing I want to touch on here in this episode about my journey is money mindset. I want to shine a light on the importance of money mindset because it really was critical in my journey and my ability to grow the business to multi-six figures in less than 2 years. I'll be honest, initially, early on, not only did I not want to focus on money, I resisted it so hard because lawyers in traditional practice have a poor rap when it comes to money. You've all heard the stories, the jokes, the memes, and I'd become so sensitive to that and so appalled at the focus on money in traditional legal practice, particularly in my experience, that I did everything I could to not be like that. But what that meant was I ended up so far toward the opposite end of the spectrum that I wasn't focusing on my numbers at all. So I worked on the basis that I knew in my head what was due to come in and what was due to go out, and I always had it covered. But beyond that, I was willingly sticking my head in the sand, and I didn't want to think about it. I can honestly say it took a lot of work with my business coach to address this. She got all sorts of resistance from me. I was not a willing participant. I really wasn't. I was telling myself that so long as my business was allowing me to draw the sort of salary that I needed to support our lifestyle, I wasn't in it for the money. Beyond this point, I just wanted to help people. So, oh my gosh, it took a lot of work to work through this. It really did. But with the help and the support and the tenacity of my coach, who really got it and who really got me, and who knew damn well that the stories I was telling myself had to go, I was able to work through the stories and work through those blocks and get up close and personal with my numbers. And that didn't mean that my why wasn't built on integrity and purpose. It just meant that I was being switched on and I was being smart, and that I was empowering myself to move forward and to continue to grow my business in a really aligned way, which ultimately would position me to be able to help and enrich more lives, which is consistent with my why. So finally, I got it. What this also meant was that I was able to bring the business to a position where my husband was able to become a stay-at-home dad, to give me the gift of even more precious time to really lean in completely into the business on an actual full-time basis. So at that point, I gave it everything, boots and all. This was almost like the last cord that we cut together of resistance and stories that I needed to let go of so that I could allow the business to thrive even more and to level up again and to fulfill my why and my mission and reach even more business owners. So the takeaway here is working on money mindset. So, oh my gosh, this was hard. It was confronting, it was triggering, it was challenging, and it often had me in tears, to be honest. To say it's been worth it would be an understatement. Doing this work has allowed me to up-level again to a point that I never imagined was possible for me. So there we have it. This is a slightly longer episode than usual, as you'll know, but I really felt it important to be authentic and transparent with you about my journey in business and to give you some insight into how I reached the position in my business that I did so quickly. I was able to hit multi-six figures within 2 years, and I genuinely put that down to what I've shared with you in this episode. To recap, there were 7 key takeaways from this episode. I'm clear. I've been able to achieve what I have by 1, being clear on my why in business, by niching early in my business journey, and by recognizing my skill set and the skill set of others and not trying to do everything myself here. That has been a massive time saver. Point 4, work with a coach. Point 5, have unwavering self-belief. That meant I was able to work through the doubt and the bouts of imposter syndrome. Point 6, outsourcing and growing my team. And number 7, working on money mindset. So there you have it. It's taken me a long time to get to the point where I've been comfortable sharing this with you, but I just love my audience so much and I'm so committed to what I'm doing, and I unwaveringly believe that I'm fulfilling my purpose in this business, and every single day I wake up and I love what I do so much. I'm so grateful and I feel truly, truly blessed to be doing what I do, connecting with the people that I connect with on my business journey. I could not be happier doing this. So that's why I wanted to share that journey with you in this episode for season 5 of the podcast. Thank you for listening. I hope that you've gotten something out of that. I'll be delving into more of the themes that I've pulled out of this episode as we work through season 5, with some guests that are coming on to deep dive into some more of those topics. And I genuinely hope that this has given you not only some insight into my story, but if you can relate to any of it, how some of the processes that you've experienced or experiencing may be working for you to give you some confidence to move forward. So as always, if you have questions or if you want to hear more about any of that, please reach out. I love hearing from you. And that's it from me for this episode. I'll catch you next time. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me. I very much appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you liked the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. And if you found this episode to be of value for you in your business, I would be ever so grateful if you would take a moment to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, because that will help this podcast reach the ears of more business owners. If you haven't already, don't forget to jump over to my website and download your free copy of my annual legal checklist designed specifically for small business owners. And if you're ready to set your business up so you can get paid every time hassle-free, check out my course, Getting Paid Made Easy. You can access these resources on my website at tmsolicitor.com.au. Remember, in business, prevention is better than cure. I'll be back with another episode for you next week. Until then, take care.